You know, most people underestimate the weight of a goodbye. They think it's just a word, just a wave of the hand, just the shutting of a door, but that's never true. Every goodbye is an imprint. It marks the end of a chapter, and sometimes it leaves a scar, or it plants a seed. And the terrifying thing is this: you rarely know which one it will be. Think about it. How many people have passed through your life? Friends, lovers, family members, gone, but not erased. You still remember the way they left. The last words, the last look. Sometimes that memory lifts you, sometimes it haunts you. And in that fragile space between staying and leaving, you have a choice. You can be forgotten, or you can etch yourself into their memory so deeply that years from now, they'll still feel your presence when your name is spoken. But here's the truth: what we often fail to do is bring ourselves fully into that moment. We rush the goodbye, we protect ourselves with shallow words, take care, see you around, and what could have been eternal dissolves into the ordinary. If you want someone never to forget you, you have to resist that temptation. You must step into the discomfort of honesty, of presence, of making that moment sacred. Because before you say goodbye, there's something you must do, something that turns an ending into a legacy. And if you don't do it, you'll carry regret. But if you do, he will never forget you. Goodbyes are never just goodbyes. A goodbye is never as simple as it looks. People convince themselves it's just a polite closure, a fleeting gesture, or a moment that will dissolve with time. But the truth is far more serious. Every goodbye is a kind of turning point, an invisible threshold where one reality ends and another begins. It's not just a word. It's not just a hug. It's a symbolic act, and symbols have a strange way of sinking deeper into memory than casual experience ever could. Think about your own life for a moment. Try to recall someone who left you, whether they walked away, drifted from your circle, or passed on. What do you remember most clearly? It's not the 1,000 conversations you had with them. It's the last moment, the final look, the tone of their voice when they said goodbye. That memory is not trivial. It's permanent. The weight of a goodbye comes from its finality. It signals the closing of a chapter, and the human mind does not let that go easily. The ending of anything, a friendship, a relationship, even a conversation, anchors itself more powerfully than all the moments leading up to it. This is because endings demand meaning. The human psyche is built to assign importance to closure. That's why the last words of a book or the final scene of a film carry so much impact. They define the story. A goodbye does the same. It defines what came before it. And if you treat it lightly, the entire narrative of your connection risks being remembered as shallow or incomplete. Most people don't realize this. They move through farewells carelessly, tossing out words like "see you later," even when they know they won't. They half embrace, they check their phone, they keep themselves distracted so they don't feel the sting of departure. And in doing so, they rob the moment of its depth. They leave nothing behind but emptiness. But the ones who understand the gravity of goodbye, the ones who step into it with their full presence, become unforgettable. Because when you fully show up at the moment of departure, when you allow yourself to feel the weight of it, you give the other person something they can't replace. The sense that they mattered, that this bond was real, that the moment itself was sacred. Goodbyes are never just about the person leaving. They are equally about the person staying. When you say goodbye, you're not only closing your chapter, you're also shaping the chapter that the other person will carry forward without you. The memory of your parting becomes a kind of inheritance. Ask yourself this: what do you want them to inherit? Do you want them to inherit indifference? Do you want them to carry confusion, hurt, or a vague sense of incompletion? Or do you want them to inherit strength, clarity, and an indelible sense of gratitude? That's the choice you make when you step into a goodbye. Every culture throughout history has understood this truth in its own way. Rituals of departure have always existed. Some are formal, like farewell ceremonies, blessings, or last rites. Some are personal, like a final letter, a symbolic gift, or a whispered secret. Why do we create these rituals? Because we know instinctively that endings must be marked. We know that the human heart clings to closure. To ignore that is to risk leaving behind confusion or pain. To embrace it is to transform a goodbye into something powerful, something that transcends time. There's another dimension to this as well. Goodbyes remind us of mortality. Whether you admit it or not, every goodbye whispers the possibility that this might be the last. You don't always know if you'll see that person again. Life is unpredictable, fragile, and cruelly uncertain. And so, when you part from someone, you're not just saying see you later, you're gambling with the fact that you might not. That's why careless goodbyes can come back to haunt people. Regret takes root in the space where words were left unspoken. But the opposite is also true. A goodbye filled with truth, gratitude, and presence becomes a gift that keeps unfolding long after the moment is gone. So what does this mean for you? It means that the next time you're standing at the edge of parting, you need to resist the easy escape of superficiality. Don't rush. Don't turn it into a transaction. Recognize the symbolic weight of the moment and step into it. Look them in the eye. Let silence breathe between you if it must. Speak the truth you've been holding back. Even a few words, if they're honest, can be remembered for a lifetime. And more than your words, let your presence speak. Let the way you hold that moment show that you are fully there, that you are not afraid of the gravity of this ending, because goodbyes are never just goodbyes. They are psychological bookmarks, sealing the story of your connection. If you treat them with carelessness, you risk being forgotten. But if you embrace their depth, if you choose to make the moment sacred, you will live on in the memory of the one you're leaving. Years from now, when they recall you, it won't be the hundreds of casual interactions that surface first. It will be the way you said goodbye, and in that memory you will remain unforgettable, undeniable, and deeply present. The power of presence, if there is one thing people underestimate in human connection, it is presence. Not the kind of presence that simply means standing in the same room or waiting for the other person to finish their sentence while your mind drifts elsewhere. I'm talking about genuine, undivided, conscious presence, the kind that makes another person feel as if, in that moment, nothing in the world exists except them. This form of presence is rare, and that's exactly why it is unforgettable. When people look back on the relationships that shaped them, they often don't remember the details of every conversation or every shared experience. What they remember is how the other person made them feel. Did they feel seen, heard, valued, or did they feel like a background actor in someone else's busy life? That difference between being acknowledged and being ignored creates a psychological imprint that lingers far beyond the moment itself. And presence is the force that creates that imprint. Think about the last time you were truly present with someone, or someone was truly present with you. The air felt different, didn't it? There was a kind of stillness, even if you were in the middle of chaos. You weren't rushing to move on. You weren't distracted by your own anxieties. You were rooted in that moment, fully engaged. That is the power of presence. It signals to the other person, you matter. You are significant enough that I am willing to set aside everything else, my phone, my worries, my future plans, and give you the gift of my complete attention. Very few things in life carry that much weight. Now consider this. When you say goodbye to someone, presence becomes even more critical. Why? Because the intensity of the moment is heightened. A farewell is already charged with meaning, and your presence, or lack of it, determines whether that meaning is nourishing or hollow. If you are distracted, half-engaged, or emotionally unavailable, the other person feels it instantly. They may not say it, but they carry it with them, and that absence of presence becomes the story they remember. On the other hand, if you are fully present, if you look them in the eye, listen carefully, and allow yourself to be vulnerable, the memory of that goodbye becomes unshakable. Presence is not passive, it requires discipline. It demands that you silence the noise in your mind, resist the urge to escape into distraction, and allow yourself to be anchored in the now. And this is difficult because the present moment is often uncomfortable. When we say goodbye, there are emotions, sadness, longing, fear, even guilt, that many would rather avoid. It is easier to look away, to keep it casual, to push through quickly, but in doing so, you lose the very thing that makes the moment powerful. Presence requires you to face that discomfort, to accept the vulnerability of truly connecting even as you part. That vulnerability is exactly what creates intimacy. There is a paradox here. People often fear being forgotten, yet they act in ways that make them forgettable. They rush, they distract themselves, they keep conversations shallow, and then they wonder why their presence didn't leave a lasting impact. But if you want someone to remember you long after you've gone, you must do the opposite. You must lean into the moment. You must resist the urge to escape. You must make that person feel like, in your final exchange, they were the only person that mattered to you in the entire world. That feeling is unforgettable. Presence is not about saying the perfect words. In fact, words often fail us in goodbyes. People stumble, they ramble, they grasp at clichés, but presence transcends language. A silent moment of eye contact, a pause that stretches without discomfort, a gesture of genuine care. These often speak louder than any string of polished sentences. And here's the truth. People remember presence more than they remember words. They might forget what you said, but they will not forget how you made them feel in those last seconds. That is the gift of presence. It bypasses the rational mind and goes straight into the emotional core. Another way to understand presence is to see it as proof of respect. When you give someone your full attention, you are telling them that their existence matters, that their story deserves acknowledgement. This is why presence is powerful in goodbyes. It validates the entire relationship. It says everything we shared was worth it, you were worth it, and I am here fully as we close this chapter. That validation can sustain someone for years, even decades. Presence also transforms you. It prevents regret. So many people carry the weight of unsaid words, of distracted farewells, of final moments wasted in triviality. They look back and wish they had been braver, more open, more intentional. But if you practice presence, you eliminate that regret. You can walk away knowing that you gave the moment everything you had. That knowledge strengthens you. It allows you to part with peace, not with guilt. So here is the challenge. The next time you face a goodbye, slow down, breathe. Look at the person as if you were imprinting their image into your mind. Set aside the phone, the rush, the excuses. Allow yourself to feel the full weight of the moment. Speak if words rise up honestly. Stay silent if silence says more. But whatever you do, be fully there, because in the end, it is not clever phrases or grand gestures that make you unforgettable. It is the rare gift of presence. And that is the paradoxical truth. Presence seems like the smallest thing, yet it is the very thing that endures. Long after you've gone, long after your words fade, the memory of your presence will remain. And that presence, that unshakable, unrepeatable gift, will ensure that they never forget you. Speak the truth you've been avoiding. There is something about goodbyes that sharpens the edges of truth. All the words we swallowed, all the feelings we suppressed, all the gratitude or admiration or sorrow we postponed, suddenly, in the face of parting, they rise to the surface, and yet most people push them back down again. They choose silence, or they hide behind polite clichés. Why? Because truth makes us vulnerable. It exposes us, and to be vulnerable in a goodbye feels almost unbearable. But here's the paradox. If you want to be remembered, if you want to leave an imprint that outlasts time, you must speak the truth you've been avoiding. Think about it. Why do unspoken words haunt us more than spoken ones? Because silence is unfinished. It leaves an open wound in the psyche. When you fail to speak the truth in a goodbye, you condemn both yourself and the other person to wonder. Did they care? Did they notice? Did I matter? These questions echo in the absence of truth, and the absence becomes heavier than any difficult admission ever could have been. The human mind craves clarity, even if it hurts. That's why a painful truth is easier to live with than a suffocating silence. There are different kinds of truths we avoid. Sometimes it's gratitude. We forget to say thank you, not for the obvious gestures but for the invisible sacrifices, the quiet loyalty, the presence that shaped us. Other times it's apology. Our pride stops us from admitting the harm we caused, the words we shouldn't have spoken, the opportunities we wasted. And sometimes it's love, not necessarily romantic, but the deep acknowledgement that this person mattered, that their existence left a mark on us. These truths are often the hardest to speak, precisely because they are the most important. We hold them back, thinking we will have more time, another chance, but time runs out, and goodbyes have a way of reminding us of that brutal fact. So, what happens when you finally dare to speak the truth? You break the illusion of control, you step into vulnerability, and in doing so, you create a memory that cannot be erased. People forget compliments, they forget routine gestures, they even forget promises. But they never forget the moment someone stripped away pretense and spoke from the heart. That kind of truth pierces through the noise of life and lodges itself in memory. Long after your presence is gone, your words remain, echoing like a compass in the other person's mind. The fear, of course, is that truth will hurt, that it will expose wounds, open old conflicts, or make things messier. And sometimes it does. But here's the deeper reality. Truth heals more than it harms. Even when it stings, it clarifies. It allows people to see reality for what it is, not for the safe illusion they constructed. And in goodbyes, truth often provides the closure that people desperately need but rarely receive. An honest "I'm sorry" can heal years of silent resentment. A sincere "I appreciate you" can transform feelings of invisibility into a sense of worth. A quiet "I love you" can anchor someone in strength long after you've gone. It is cowardice that makes us avoid these words, and it is courage that makes us speak them. But courage in a goodbye is precisely what makes you unforgettable. Most people flee from vulnerability. They prefer safety, even if safety means emptiness. When you choose instead to confront the discomfort, when you offer the words that cost you something, you elevate yourself above the forgettable masses. You show that you were willing to be real, and realness is always remembered. There is also an ethical dimension to this. To withhold truth in a goodbye is in some sense a kind of theft. You steal from the other person the dignity of knowing where they stand with you. You deny them the clarity that could help them move forward, and you rob yourself of the freedom that truth provides. Honesty, even at the last moment, is a gift. It may not be wrapped neatly, but it is far more valuable than empty politeness. So ask yourself, what truth have you been avoiding? Is it an apology you owe? Is it admiration you've kept silent about because it felt too vulnerable to admit? Is it gratitude for the small things, the things no one else noticed but mattered to you? Or is it the simplest truth of all, that their presence in your life was a gift? Whatever it is, know this. If you don't speak it before you say goodbye, it will echo in the silence forever. But if you do, that moment will carry more weight than all the superficial exchanges that came before it. Here is the challenge. At the moment of parting, dare to speak the words that frighten you. Don't let fear or pride steal from you the chance to be remembered honestly. Truth is uncomfortable, yes, but it is also liberating. And in a world where so many people choose safety over sincerity, your willingness to speak truth will set you apart. It will make you unforgettable, because in the end, people don't remember the safe words. They don't remember the empty gestures. They remember the moment someone looked them in the eye and said what no one else dared to say. They remember the courage, the vulnerability, the humanity of that truth. And when you give them that gift before you say goodbye, they will carry it for the rest of their life. Mark the moment with symbolic action. Words alone are rarely enough to define a moment. They fade, they're misremembered, or they dissolve into the flood of everything else that has been said. But actions, especially symbolic actions, cut through the noise of memory and lodge themselves permanently in the human psyche. This is why, when it comes to saying goodbye, Words should be paired with something more tangible, more unforgettable. A gesture, a token, or an act that marks the moment in a way that cannot be erased. To leave someone with only words is to risk being forgotten. To leave them with a symbolic action is to carve your presence into their story. Throughout human history, people have used symbolic acts to give weight to important transitions. Rituals of departure, parting gifts, written letters, even a shared meal. These were not accidents. They were acknowledgments that endings must be marked. Because the psyche does not release easily, it needs something to hold on to, something to anchor the moment and make it real. That's what a symbolic action does. It transforms an abstract goodbye into a physical memory, and that memory becomes the proof that the relationship mattered. Think about it. You probably don't remember every conversation you had with a friend who left, but you remember the gift they gave you, or the place they took you on the last night you spent together. You don't remember all the words exchanged in a farewell with a loved one, but you remember the letter they wrote you, or the way they folded a note into your hand before they turned away. Actions crystallize memory. They give the heart something to return to when the person is gone, and sometimes that small gesture becomes a source of strength for years to come. But here's the deeper truth: it's not the size of the gesture that matters, but the meaning behind it. People mistakenly believe they need to make grand, dramatic displays in order to be remembered. They think of extravagant gifts or sweeping speeches, but those fade because they often lack sincerity. What lingers is not extravagance but symbolism. A simple object, tied to a memory only the two of you share, carries far more weight than something expensive or flashy. A book with notes in the margin. A shared song hummed quietly. A pressed flower handed over without words. These things don't just represent a goodbye. They represent the bond itself. And because they are infused with meaning, they carry you forward in ways nothing superficial ever could. Symbolic actions also create closure. When we leave without marking the moment, the goodbye feels unfinished, almost like a door left half open. But when we choose a deliberate gesture, we close the chapter fully, with dignity and intention. This is why rituals matter. They create a sense of completion, of finality, and that helps both people move forward without regret. The gesture becomes a bridge between the past and the future, honoring what was shared while acknowledging what is ending. Now, you might ask, what if I don't know what symbolic action to choose? The answer is simpler than you think. The most powerful gestures arise naturally from the relationship itself. Ask yourself, what is unique about the bond you shared? What inside joke, what memory, what small, ordinary object carries significance only between the two of you? That is where your symbolic action lies. It does not need to be impressive, it needs to be authentic. A farewell letter that says what you never dared to speak aloud. A photo with a note scrawled on the back. A quiet embrace that lasts longer than words. Even silence itself, held intentionally, can be a symbolic act. The point is not performance, it is authenticity. Symbolic actions also carry moral weight. They say, without words, I valued this connection enough to mark it, to seal it with something lasting. They elevate the relationship above the ordinary, turning it into something sacred. And that sacredness is what ensures you will not be forgotten. Because years from now, when the details have blurred, that gesture will resurface suddenly, vividly, and it will bring with it the full emotional memory of who you were and what you meant. But here's the warning: if you fail to mark the moment, you risk being erased. Think of all the times someone left your life without a word, without a gesture, without anything to signify that you mattered. How does that memory feel? Hollow, incomplete, almost like you imagined the connection. That's the consequence of neglecting symbolic action. You dissolve into the background of memory, one more face among countless others. But when you take the time to mark the moment, you separate yourself from the forgettable. You become unforgettable. So when the moment of goodbye comes, don't shrink back, don't rush, don't leave the ending to chance. Choose a symbolic action, something that carries meaning, something that speaks louder than words. It doesn't need to be elaborate. It doesn't need to be explained. What matters is that it is deliberate, that it comes from the heart, and that it crystallizes the truth of what you shared. That action will live longer than you. It will linger in their memory, not as a vague recollection, but as a concrete proof of your presence in their life. Because here is the truth: words fade, but symbols endure. And when you mark a goodbye with a symbolic action, you transform an ending into a legacy. You turn yourself from someone who was once present into someone who will always be remembered. And that is the power of marking the moment. Leave them with strength, not emptiness. Every goodbye leaves something behind. The only question is what? Some goodbyes leave emptiness, a hollow ache that gnaws at the one who stays. Others leave confusion, bitterness, or regret. But the most meaningful goodbyes leave strength. They leave behind a memory that carries someone forward, a sense of dignity, a reminder that what was shared was real, and that they are better, not broken, because of it. And if you want to be unforgettable, if you want your absence to echo as powerfully as your presence once did, then this must be your goal. Leave them with strength, not emptiness. The truth is, endings are already heavy. They carry their own natural weight: loss, absence, uncertainty. You don't need to add to that weight by leaving someone in despair. Yet so many people do, often without realizing it. They slam doors. They use goodbyes as weapons. They vanish without explanation, or they fill the last moments with bitterness. And while this might temporarily protect their pride or shield them from vulnerability, it inflicts a wound on the other person that lingers for years. That's what emptiness feels like, the vacuum left by a goodbye that took more than it gave. Strength, on the other hand, is the opposite. To leave someone with strength is to gift them something at the very moment they are about to lose you. It is to remind them of their worth, to reassure them of the value of what you shared, to encourage them toward the future rather than chaining them to the past. A goodbye like that does not erase the pain of parting, but it transforms it into something noble, something sustaining. And that transformation is what keeps you alive in their memory, not as a source of torment, but as a source of strength. How do you do this? First, by offering clarity. Ambiguity is one of the cruelest forms of emptiness. When people are left with unanswered questions, did I matter? Were they honest? Was it all real? They spiral. Their mind fills the silence with doubt, and that doubt weakens them. But when you speak with honesty, when you articulate clearly what the relationship meant, you give them strength. You anchor their memory in truth rather than uncertainty. They may still feel the pain of parting, but it will be a clean wound, not an infected one. Second, you leave them with strength by offering affirmation. Remind them of their value, not in some vague, shallow way, but in concrete terms. Tell them the qualities you admired, the ways they impacted you, the moments when their presence changed your life. These acknowledgments become a shield against despair. Because when you lose someone, it's easy to question yourself, to feel abandoned or diminished. But if your goodbye carries affirmation, the one you leave behind walks away not with doubt, but with dignity. They carry proof that they mattered, that they were significant, and that their story is not defined by loss alone. Third, you can leave strength through vision. A goodbye should not trap someone in the past. It should push them toward the future. Offer words that point forward, not just backward. Encourage them toward their potential. Remind them of what they are capable of. Plant seeds of hope in the soil of parting, because when the moment is heavy, people can't always see beyond it. But if you use your goodbye to remind them that life is not ending, only changing, you equip them with the courage to keep moving forward. And finally, you leave strength through grace. Goodbyes are often tangled with mistakes, with disappointments, with things left undone. But if you can bring forgiveness into the moment, whether toward them or yourself, you leave behind peace instead of poison. Grace is one of the rarest gifts you can give, especially when everything in you wants to cling to blame or pride. But it is also the gift that endures the longest. People may forget compliments, but they never forget forgiveness. They never forget the moment you chose compassion over resentment, even in parting. That memory becomes a quiet source of strength they carry for years. None of this is easy. To leave someone with strength requires emotional maturity, selflessness, and courage. It demands that you think not only of your own pain, but of the legacy you are leaving in the heart of another human being. But this is precisely what makes it powerful, because the majority of people do not rise to this challenge. They retreat into anger, indifference, or avoidance. And in doing so, they become forgettable. But if you rise higher, if you choose to give rather than to take, you set yourself apart forever. Goodbyes, after all, are not just endings, they are also beginnings. The way you leave someone shapes the way they step into their future. You can leave them weakened, doubting, and hollow, or you can leave them affirmed, strengthened, and inspired. That choice is yours. And when you choose the latter, you don't just leave, you remain. You remain in their memory not as a wound, but as a foundation. You remain not as a shadow, but as a source of light. So when the time comes, and it always does, do not think only of yourself. Do not think only of the loss. Think of the legacy you are leaving in that final moment. Be the person who gives strength, not emptiness. Because years from now, when they recall you, it will not be with bitterness or regret. It will be with gratitude, with dignity, and with the unshakable memory that when you said goodbye, you gave them something to hold on to, and in that strength they will never forget you.